Welcome back, family. Today, what we are going to do is break down the ancient Hebrew Mazzaroth. What we're looking at here today is a depiction of the ancient Mazzaroth found in Israel. And this was part of my work in decoding how the ancient Mazzaroth works when I was using stellarium. And I used this depiction along with the Dendera star map. And this has taken me years and years and years and years, over 15 years of studying the stars in this way. One of the things that I learned a long time ago when I was studying Dead Sea Scrolls and Essene culture is that there was a radical difference between the Essene understanding and the Pharisaical or the Sadducee understanding. They had a lot of difference in their prophetic understanding, their scriptural understanding, and most of all with the calendrical system of counting years, days, months, and all of those things. So when I discovered this ancient artifact, it led me on to some great discoveries. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to decode this for all of the watchmen so that they can actually see how this ancient star map works in the heavens, and we will be able to learn about the gates, we're going to learn about the portals, and we're going to learn about how these keys are shown to us here in this depiction. So, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at this from a gate perspective. So in the corners here, each of these corners is a gatekeeper. Okay, you see these four corners? We're talking about the gatekeepers. So here we have the Lion's Gate, and you can see how it is lined up between the constellation of Virgo and Leo. And you remember the sun always travels in a counterclockwise motion going through the Mazzaroth. And so it enters through Leo into the gate. So this is called the Lion's Gate. Then we move ourselves down and we look at the Golden Gate. And this is even depicted with gold. And we call this Golden Gate the Scorpio Gate, because the sun is traveling through Scorpio. And one of the things that I want to show you is if you look here at the Lion's Gate, it looks as though it's centered between the constellation of Virgo and Leo. But if you look at the Golden Gate, it is centered closer to the Scorpio side and not over the portal between Sagittarius and Scorpio. And so I want to point that out because that's going to become very important later in the video when we show you how the calendrical system works. So moving over, we have the next gatekeeper, and this is the Aquarian gate. And as the sun travels through, it is passing into Aquarius. You can see how the Aquarian gate is slightly over Aquarius and not directly over the portal. And we'll show you how we determine that these are portals. Okay, so this is the portal line, but it's not lined up with the gate. The gate is into Aquarius more than it is into Pisces. And then we're going to move up to the silver gate, which is here. And you can see how the silver gate is lined up between the constellation of Taurus and Gemini. So we have at the top of the Mazzaroth, we have the silver gate and the lion's gate aligning with the portals, and at the bottom of the Mazzaroth we are slightly shifted from the gates and portals. And one of the things that we want to show you that's really important and that determines that this is a pre-Exodus calendrical system is that we do not see a portal between Aries and Taurus. There is no portal, and the portals are where we begin our years and how we count our months from the Mazzaroth. So remember, this is an ancient system, and this is before the moon was used to make any calculations. The only thing that the moon was used for is as what we call the faithful witness. And if you go watch my video, Hanukkah and the faithful witness, then you will learn how we make this determination using the sun, the moon, and the Mazzaroth, which is the stars. So whenever there is a biblical verse that talks about the stars, it is actually presenting to you the Mazzaroth. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to show you how these images are used to show you how these gates and portals work. So in the center of this image, we see a depiction of what's called the sun in the silver gate. So this is a representation of the sun. This is a representation of what we call the rainbow gate. And this rainbow gate is a star gate. And you can see how this silver gate aligns between the constellation of Taurus and Gemini. And we have shown you in stellarium with the escape of the bride and multiple other videos that we have seen a lot of signs in this area between the horns of Taurus and the silver gate and the entrance into Gemini. And there's been a lot of videos coming out lately about Gemini And we want everybody to remember, when it comes to Mazzaroth, the sun is moving in a counterclockwise motion, and so this gate would actually be a Taurus gate. The silver gate is a Taurus gate because the sun will enter into Taurus before it moves across the portal and into the next constellation. So in the center here, we have things that need to be decoded in order to understand the language of why this is the silver gate. So first we have the Pleiades. And in ancient depictions, the Pleiades was actually shown as 8 stars. And there's a lot of evidence out there. You can go do your own research and find this information for yourself. Pleiades is shown between 6 and 8 stars. And then we have the Orion belt stars that are here presented to us in the center of this depiction. And if you go study about the Mazzaroth Silver Gate, then you'll learn that that Silver Gate is tied to the Pleiades and it's tied to Orion. And then we have these 4 characters here in the middle, and those are the representations of the gates. And they're also a representation of the 4 cardinal points that are part of the sun, which are tied to the equinoxes and the solstices, and it's also tied to the 4 cardinal points of the seasons, and that shows us that this is an ancient solar depiction. The sun is the ruler of the houses. We also, in the middle, we see Spica star. And the reason we know it's Spica is the Spica star is shown here in Virgo, and it is a representation on this side of the Mazzaroth of Spica, and then on the other side we come over here and we see Castor and Pollux, which is Gemini. And we see the moon in Gemini. And the sun would be in the Silver Gate, and it could also be in Gemini, because the Silver Gate goes between Taurus and Gemini. And for these other signs that are here, we see that this depiction in the middle is showing us a key. It's also a gatekeeper. And the way we look at this ancient depiction is with what we call the Spica key. And we can see this line here on this left side. This left side portal is the depiction of the beginning of the ancient year. Now remember, we can even see this with the modern Jewish system. They always talk about their religious year in Tishri, which is their 7th month. And that is a system that in ancient times was pegged to the constellation of Aries. And they do not do it that way anymore. Unfortunately, it's strictly a lunar system, and they're not adjusting their lunar months based on Aries. It is strictly a calculation that has taken place, and most of the watchmen know about when that happened with the Hallel calculations. But what we're showing here is the ancient system and the ancient way of looking at this system. If you go to Dendera and you look at the Dendera star map and you learn to decode that Dendera star map, you will learn that it is all tied to Spica, that the star Spica is the key. And in my work, I've learned that this circle and this line coming out this side is the key. It's the key. I call it the womb key because Spica is the harvest or the womb portal where all of the planets come across. They come through Virgo and they pass Spica. And in ancient times, it was shown how, I have broken this down in my Hanukkah and the Faithful Witness video, but it was always looked at in the ancient times where the sun would pass through Spica, and then a certain count would happen, and then the new year would be determined based on the count. Now, today we have stellarium, and I can use stellarium, the constellations, the sun and the moon to make those determinations with great accuracy without worrying about clouds or anything like that. I can take away whatever I need to take away to make those determinations in real time. And so those of us who are doing this stellarium work are able to see things in a greater light than the ancient Mazzaroth watchmen were able to do. We have tools at our hand that allow us to decode things that would have never been able to be seen without these tools. And in our time, I believe that much of the scripture was written knowing that the Mazzaroth watchmen of today would be able to decode a lot of these scriptures based on stellar observations. And so we in the ancient Mazzaroth understanding, we would always determine our year here, starting with Spica and moving down through the constellations. The Mazzaroth story would always begin with Virgo, Spica, and ultimately end with Leo, because if it's starting in Virgo, then it's going to end in Leo. And that is the Mazzaroth story. It always starts with Virgo, and it always ends with Leo. To try to make it to where the story starts in Aries is impossible. We can make calendrical observations using the post-Exodus timeline, because most of the modern celebrations of the Jewish people, of the ancient Israelites, also were based on the lunar system. And that lunar observation was not the only way that they determined their years. At the time of the Mazzaroth, there was still there were Essenes within those people, and they held to the ancient calendar. And that's the only way any of this ever got passed down in Israel, is there has always been a difference between the civil count and the ancient religious count. I don't believe that has ever changed. Even today, you can see that the Jews have their new year in Tishri, and that many of the codes that are associated with the return of the Messiah, etc., are tied to Tishri and trumpets and tabernacles. And so what we're looking at here is the ancient system being recognized. This was always a spica start, and then that was lost because, as I've shown in other videos that I have presented, there was a differentiation between the Pharisaical understanding, which was essentially it became Babylonian, because when they went into exile, their understanding was set in stone because of how much time they were in, taken from their land. They had lost their way. They had lost their original calendars. They had lost a lot of their prophetic understanding, and it takes things like this ancient depiction for us to be able to learn what the ancients were showing us. And so, going back to this Spica Stargate, we can see that this portal that's associated with the Lion's Gate is offset from this Lion's Gate. And so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to show you that this is not an equal system in this Mazzaroth. If it was equal, we would have 3 constellations between each portal, and they would all be lined up with the actual gates. The portals would line up with the gates, but they don't. So let's go ahead and count this. So here we have the portal after Spica. We have a count of 1 constellation and 2 constellations. Then we have another portal. Then we have 1, 2, 3 constellations. Then we have another portal. And then we have 1, 2, 3 constellations. then we have another portal, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 constellations. So we're not looking at a system that is equal. We have an offset portal. If it was equal, it would be directly here under the Lion's Gate. And this is why the Dendera star map is very important for decoding all of this star language, because it's presented in that star map. And for those of you who have not seen the work of Wayne Herschel, I highly suggest going and taking a look at all of his information. I don't agree with some of his information or his perspective, but there are great nuggets that are disclosed in his research that all play a big role in the understanding of these ancient systems. And that man has done some great work that can be used by the modern Mazzaroth watchman to gain a deeper understanding of these gates and portals. I don't agree with some of his understanding of the ancient times, and he has a slight bit of astrology that is mixed into his work, and I don't think that is an intentional thing on his part. I've actually seen other Mazzaroth watchmen who are bringing forth a lot of great information, and they make mistakes also with the Mazzaroth because of the Babylonian system being so prevalent in Judaism. And that Babylonian system has infiltrated our understanding, and that Babylonian system is where we get the majority of our astrological understandings today. And modern astrology is a corruption of the ancient Mazzaroth. And I'll be doing more video breakdowns on how using stellarium can show you how using astrology to determine anything is corrupt and is only going to lead to false understanding. So, for those of you who have not heard that before, here on this channel we do not promote anything that has to do with astrology. We are strictly showing you the ancient Mazzaroth system based on the ancient Israelite understanding. This is even more ancient than the Israelites. This goes back to pre-Abrahamic times. This is essentially Enochian, and this is being passed down through the ages and depicted in multiple different ways. Like I said, you can see this on the Dendera. It's essentially showing you the same thing, but in much more grand detail. There are some differences in the way that these houses or constellations are depicted. I really, really like the way that the ancient Egyptians depicted things, and their star story is amazing when you can take the Israelite understanding, and then you take the Egyptian understanding, and then you are able to see even the ancient Babylonian and Sumerian understandings of this system can help you to gain a deeper understanding of what we were looking at in the ancient times. And so the first thing is that these portals are not even, and they're showing us that there's something going on here with Virgo. And like I said, this should be the portal line if everything was even in the Mazzaroth, but it's not. It's offset one. We have 4 houses here and 2 houses here, 3 and 3. And so it's telling us something. This is language that needs to be decoded. And one of the things that helped me to determine how to look at the ancient system was this spica star, and reading about how the ancient Jews used Aries to begin the year. And that helped me to balance when the sun enters into Aries, it's just past lining up with the spica star. And so I needed to wait until I had the moon as a faithful witness to show me the sun and the moon align in the beginning of the Aries constellation, which would put me at a equation with this spica star key language. And so if you go see that video, again, it's Hanukkah and the Faithful Witness. I used all of this information to determine that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the last depiction, and we're going to show you just strictly the portals. So again, we start our year here at the spica, or what we call the womb portal. All of the planets, the sun and the moon, travel through Virgo. They pass spica. Spica is harvest language. You can see how spica has a wheat sheaf and a corn sheaf, and it is depicting if you look at the star Parima and you look at the star spica, Parima is where they enter into the womb, and spica is where they are born of the Virgin. So for those of you who remember the Revelation 12 sign, it began with Jupiter being born on September the 9th. That's a real funny date because my sister's birthday is September the 9th. And so one of the things that really stood out with this system is everything that we've been showing in the Mazzaroth speaks volumes to this way of counting. We're not using the start point for any of our calculations that we've done here, but we're acknowledging that the Mazzaroth starts here. that the story in the heavens will always start with Spica or Virgo and end with Leo, and that the year is depicted here with the key. And as we go through the Mazzaroth, you can see these different portals. And these different portals are places of alignment. So we have between the constellation of Scorpio and Sagittarius, we see a portal. And these portals are where we have divisions of time. Our next portal is the Aquarian portal. It is again offset from this Aquarian gate. This portal is again a way of calculating time. Then we see the Bull portal or the Taurus portal. This silver gate is a Tauridian gate. As again we say, the sun comes through the horns of Taurus and then enters into the portal and the gate. This one is aligned between the constellations. And we've shown you in many videos how that works. And so what we're going to do in another video is we're going to come back and we're going to talk about why there's a division here with the 4, 2, 3, and 3. Today our video is to show you how these gates and these portals work, and in the ancient times how the depiction of the year began. There are some Egyptian depictions that we're going to bring to you in the next video that shows a key, and this key lines up with this womb portal. And in ancient times, a lot of people look at the ancient Egyptians and they assume that these were all sun worshippers, or that they were all worshiping all of these different gods. And it became that later in Egyptian history. But what is depicted in the majority of the pyramids and Luxor and many other of the ruins in Egypt are ancient depictions before there was the turning of these images into godlike depictions. And from my research, that was not the case in the ancient times. They were not worshiping the sun and the moon and the stars. They had very exacting language for what these represented. And if you've done any research on Akhenaten, then you'll understand that that the priests, which is ruling the world today, the priests are the ones who have turned the story upside down, and they are the ones who are presenting to us false information about the ancient times. Everything that you hear from the modern Egyptian artifact people is, in most cases, corruption. The ancients did not do what a lot of our historians said that they did. It became false worship, just as in uh, uh, Central America, in the Americas with the Mayans and the Aztecs and the natives of the Americas. In the ancient times, they did not have a false worship system, but it became that, and it became sacrifice of humans. It became war-like tribes. They fell into disarray. It was not that way in the beginning. And so I wanted to bring that before the family. You can do your own research and dig deeper into these topics that we're talking about. But in the ancient times, the Mazzaroth was always and will always start with Spica and what we call the womb portal of Virgo. And it will always end with Leo. And if you go and do your research into the Mazzaroth, you will see that 90% of the Mazzaroth watchmen are presenting the information this way. It has always been presented this way until recent times. And in those recent times, we have a mixing of astrology and Mazzaroth work. And that's where we get Mazzaroth watchmen or people who are using the Mazzaroth starting with Aries. And we can do that count calendrically, but we do not start our Mazzaroth story from Aries. We always started from Virgo, the Virgin, and that matches our star language for biblical determination of the life, death, and resurrection of Messiah, and all of the work that he is doing is told from that story, and it always fits that way, and you have to try to make it work by starting with Aries or starting with the moon or any of those things. Will always leave one piece of the puzzle out. It's vital to understand that in the ancient times it was the sun and the moon and the stars. If you go do your research on Enoch, there was 3 systems that he broke down. You can see that in the book of Enoch. You can read about it in Jasher. There are multiple books that will help us to understand this. There's 3 systems and 3 determinations. There is the year of the sun. There is the moon system. And there is the star system. And that's the Mazzaroth. And so in the ancient times, these all had to align. This is Ezekiel's wheels. A lot of biblical authors and biblical researchers make a mistake thinking that is some kind of spaceship or some kind of there's something besides what it really is, which is the Mazzaroth. It's the sun, the moon, and the star system. You can see it. These are 3 wheels within wheels. And these wheels are turned to each other until they lock into a position where they equate. And until you learn the sun system, the moon system, and the star system, you won't be able to turn those wheels and get them to align. And that's what we're doing here, is we're breaking down how these gates and portals work in the Mazzaroth, and then we can look into stellarium, and we can look for how to determine that using the sun and then the moon as a faithful witness. And the sun has to be in a certain star position in order for us to make our determinations. The sun can't just be in an inordinate location for us to start the year. It has to be in a very specific location. With our recent developments, we have been using April 20th as the key date, which means that April 21st is the first day of the year. April 20th is what we call our keystone date. And you can go and look at multiple of my videos showing how all of these things align with everything that we're talking about. You can also go watch Brother Dana's video on Hanukkah. You can watch his latest video that he just released, and it is all lining up using this system. It's undeniable, and so I am bringing this video forth so that you have a greater understanding of this ancient system, and that there's not confusion amongst the brethren on how this system works. It's not tied to a lunar count, and it's also not tied to the sun, because if it was tied to the sun, then we would use either an equilux or an equinox. That is the sun's sign, and that's only one of the three that we have to use in order to make our determination. And so again, one more time, if you have not seen that video, Hanukkah and the Faithful Witness, go back and watch that video. That will show you how I make my determinations. And then you can go watch Brother Dana's video on Hanukkah, again, his latest video. And then also you can take it a little further and watch some of Steve Fletcher's videos when he was presenting how everything was lining up for January 11th and all of the blood moons and solar eclipses aligning all the way from 1948 and having equal dates on either side of January 11th. And if you have been with me for a little while, you know January 11th was the 9th month and 24th day, and that is the day before Hanukkah. And I have stumbled into a whole bunch more things that we have to present to the body, but if you've seen any of my community posts or have heard some of my older videos, I'm in Portland now, and I'm trying to help my friend Rose to get through cervical cancer, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult for me to have the time to do these videos. It's just going to take me a little bit more to be able to break these all down. But I wanted to bring this before everyone for edification. So thanks a lot for joining. We will talk to you soon.